SCP-6099 Unveiled. Object Class Esoteric. Special Containment Procedures. SCP-6099 is to be stored within Site-120 and used only with approval from the O5 Council. Fabricated accounts of uses of SCP-6099 are to be declassified at Level 3 clearance in an altered version of this file. SCP-6099's research team is to be granted access to this file and are to get approval for its usage upon request of the O5 Council. Any newly discovered temporal anomalies are to be investigated for the potential of similar properties to that of SCP-6099. If the capabilities of historical documentation are deemed to be of comparable accuracy to that of SCP-6099, all documentation is to be classified. Fabricated accounts of tests are to be created and implemented into a lower clearance document. All non-authorized personnel involved in their study are to be administered amnestics. If the information contained in SCP-6099's documentation becomes known to an unmanageable number of individuals, normalcy is to be maintained. Any disputes on the definition of normalcy by Foundation staff are to be disregarded. Description: SCP-6099 is a cylindrical chamber created by the Foundation to observe and record historical events that are either undocumented or lack reliable information and/or sources. This was achieved through the utilization of several temporal anomalies, thaumaturgical rituals, and visual filters incorporating the use of Scranton reality anchors. When in use, the chamber will display the requested location as the date inputted. The internal space of SCP-6099 will alter in size so exploration and analysis of the location becomes possible. While it is not possible to affect past events, objects within can be interacted with and can be viewed and tested as they were in that moment of time. Addendum: Upon creation, several tests of SCP-6099 were conducted to ensure that its uses provided accurate information. See below. August 28, 1963. Martin Luther King Jr.'s civil rights speech at the Lincoln Memorial. Results of test: footage accurate. Additional notes: test used to ensure that footage received from SCP-6099 was consistent with information already known. March 20th, 1929. Al Capone's appearance before the federal grand jury. Results of test: footage accurate. Additional notes: test showed events similar to those described in news coverage of that time. June 28, 1838. The coronation of Queen Victoria. Results of test: inaccuracies present. Additional notes: see Video Transcript 6099-A. Video Transcript 6099-A. Date: June 28, 1838. Location: Westminster Abbey, London, England. Forward: the crowning of Queen Victoria. Begin log. Queen Victoria processes into the Abbey as fanfare is played by an ensemble. She takes a seat in front of the altar as the fanfare concludes. The space inside Westminster Abbey is several times larger than its exterior, leading to many more guests than would ever normally be possible attending the service. Among these crowds are groups of SCP-1000 and Fae gathered throughout the stands. Near the front of the crowds, Dr. Fritz Williams can be sighted. Footnote 1. Future Administrator and Founder of the Foundation. Light fixtures are suspended in mid-air through thaumaturgy. The Archbishop of Canterbury stands before the Queen and speaks, his voice projecting across all of the building. Archbishop of Canterbury. Is your Majesty willing to take the oath? Queen Victoria. I am willing. Do you solemnly swear to govern the people of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Ireland, Australia, and of your possession the other territories belonging or pertaining? Do you promise to lead and govern the occult and mystical through the wisdom of God, according to our respective law and custom? I solemnly promise. The Queen signs the form of oath. Her robe is removed as she takes a seat in St. Edward's chair. The sword of states, the royal emblem, the orb and the crown of St. Edward's are presented as the crowd proclaims, God save the Queen. During this section of the service, Dr. Williams exits the Abbey. The service continues and concludes as the Queen makes her promise to the people, and they likewise make their promises to her. She processes out of the Abbey as fanfare is played once again. End log. Closing statement. Research into the cause of the deviation of expected footage is to be considered a top priority at the present time. The presence of Fritz Williams in the video log is also to be investigated. SCP-6099 is to undergo maintenance to ensure its functionality. Several uses of SCP-6099 by the research team were conducted after the above log was observed. They determined that a CK-class reality restructuring scenario took place on January 15, 1839, hypothesized to be responsible for the concealment of the anomalous from the public. Before this event, the existence of anomalies was considered mundane by the majority of the world at the time. The current cause of this change is unknown, but notably several weeks after this occurrence, the earliest version of the Foundation was formed, with Williams in the position of administrator. Williams is currently deceased, and the position of administrator is suspended. Video transcript 6099-B. Date: July 3rd, 1838. Location: the Royal Institute of Great Britain. Forward. Investigation of Fritz Williams' appearance and earlier logs show that he was present in London during this period to give a speech on research he'd conducted. The nature of this research has likely changed due to the aforementioned CK scenario. Begin log. Williams walks to the center of the stage. A form of microphone is suspended in front of him. Footnote 2. Due to microphones not being created until the 1870s, this was achieved through an anomalous item of similar properties. Williams. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you are all well. My name is Dr. Fritz Williams, and I am here today to talk about the research that my colleagues and I have begun on the origin of the magic that accompanies us through every facet of our daily lives. You see, humanity in its present state has been around for countless years, and the wonders of this world have been beside us for each and every step of our growth. But it wasn't always like this. We once huddled in the dark, afraid of each moving rock and many-headed bird that came before us. We prayed and cowered in our caves, hoping to be spared from things we couldn't comprehend. But as our numbers grew, we realized we didn't have to be afraid of them. Our numbers rose together. The world made more sense as there became less and less to be scared of. Harmony was achieved once we embraced the undeniable facts of our world. The universe demands the absurd and impossible. The world still has so much that we do not understand, just as it was in the caves. But we must never go back to hiding in fear, nor can we accept these truths blindly and become complacent. To dwell in the light, we must know the dark. The microphone falls to the ground in front of Williams and ceases function. After some time, a replacement is suspended in the air by staff. Williams continues. Sorry about that. As I was saying, we've made great strides in our understanding. Each day we find one more thing we cannot explain, but that doesn't stop us from finding uses for them to improve our day-to-day life. Be it the ashes of phoenixes helping us save lives, the countless properties of unicorn horns, or astounding art that can quite literally never fail to bring joy to the mind. But I think our team has made the greatest discovery to date. Our research has now given us the ability to recreate the effects of these wondrous objects. That's right. We've learned how to take them apart piece by piece and make them anew. An artificial essence of the magic that can be mass-produced to all. Any item, even those that we can never know the true origin of, can be remade. Our testing and research are at this point complete. We've begun to apply it to objects around the labs, and even our own personal items where needed. But soon, we will be able to apply this technique all over the world. The audience stands and gives a loud round of applause. End log. Closing statement. A request for research into the technique described in this log has been proposed to the O5 Council. Approval is pending. After the events of this log, the utilization of anomalies created by the aforementioned technique was reported by news outlets observed throughout SCP-6099 to be increasing at a much higher rate due to the development of factories across the world. Through observation, it has been noted that these manufactured anomalies are created through reverse engineering an object by disassembling it and applying its anomalous properties to other items. This process currently contradicts all known research into the anomalous and occult. Investigation into how this is possible is ongoing. Addendum 6099-B. SCP-6099's research team were instructed to research several factories created for the distribution of the anomalous to learn more about the process involved. See transcript below. Date: August 8, 1838. Location: Millwall, Isle of Dogs, London. Forward. An investigation was undertaken to determine more about the nature of this process by observing factories that were known to utilize the said technique. Begin log. Loud whirring fills the room. Several pieces of large machinery are located around an expansive building with small patches of straw covering the floor. The machines are being operated by groups of workers, many of them young and covered in loose clothing. Part of an engine suddenly moves outwards and separates into fractal patterns. The mechanism then retracts into itself to reveal a larger pattern that continues to move into itself. This process continues until it retracts into its original shape and reforms the original mechanisms. A high-pitched scraping sound is heard. One section of the motor melts, boils, twists into multiple non-Euclidean shapes, and then deposits back into the shape of the motor and repeats the process. Miscellaneous items are dispensed from each machine into several crates. They are then subsequently taken out of the factory. A thaumaturgical ritual circle has been created at the center of the space from powder and surrounded by machinery. After some time, Dr. Aaron Siegel, a researcher from Dr. Williams' team, walks into the room holding a black knife decorated with intricate green patterns. He places it on a table in front of him. Siegel: Morning, everyone. New delivery came in just for you all. It seems we've got ourselves an interesting little knife. He grabs the knife and plunges it into the table. The table begins to decay and rot until the ground becomes sodden. I want you all to be very careful with this thing. If it was up to me, you wouldn't be able to get within a mile of this, but you know what you need to do. I'd stay and make sure you're all okay, but I've got paperwork that needs doing by tomorrow, or else my neck is on the line. Siegel walks back out of the room up towards a separate office. A worker takes the knife and places it in the center of the thaumaturgic circle. She then goes to the side of the room and retrieves a bottle of unknown powder. The worker unscrews the bottle and pours the powder onto the ritual, causing it to combust into a green flame. Slowly, The knife begins to melt into the shape of the symbols below it, creating a metallic shine underneath the fire. Sparks begin to appear around the circle at increasingly higher and higher rates. Space around the area begins to peel and distort as the fire continues to burn. Layers of the metal unfurl and separate into the air. The metal then splits and burns as a burst of air. The fire glows brightly as lines connecting the machines around the room to the center become visible underneath the straw. Each of their furnaces ignite. The ritual continues until all the metal has been combusted. After the fire expires, all machines briefly stop. The final embers of the circle fade before the machines begin to grind and roar alive once again. Once they resume, knives are now among the miscellaneous items being manufactured. The thaumaturgic circle in the center of the room remains intact. End log. Closing statement. Examinations of this region during activation of SCP-6099 show that all levels of EVE emissions, footnote 3, the fundamental energy that powers thaumaturgy, in the surrounding area of this reaction had decreased below a certain limit besides the center of the room. This briefly caused an insufficient amount of energy for the surrounding area, and it was the source of the momentary stop of the factory's machinery. After the fire at the center had expired, the presence of EVE radiation was lost. During the months that followed the mass distribution of the Anomalous to a wider population, news outlets at this time claimed that this period was a time of prosperity. But it is to also be noted that several disasters within anomalous communities and populations were reported. The most notable of these being the frequency of hunting of several species of anomalous wildlife, such as the harvesting of unicorn horns and the collecting of phoenix ash, rose to unsustainable levels and led to a dramatic decrease in each of their populations. The occurrence of supernatural events known as Aestus Terrae increased in frequency, leading to widespread damage to numerous coastal areas. Footnote 4. An event involving the movement of the coast in tandem with the movement of the tide, responsible for damage to tectonic plates and increased seismic activity. Several anomalies that were considered vital to the sustaining of anomalous communities, such as those that served as energy sources or water filtration, ceased to function. This led to the displacement of many groups as their previous locations quickly became inhospitable. An outbreak of illness became prevalent within many Fey communities. While it appeared to be non-infectious, attempts to treat symptoms had minimal success. Video transcript 6099-D. Date January 11th, 1839. Location Detroit, Michigan. Forward. A conversation discovered by SCP-6099 between Dr. F. Williams and Dr. A. Siegel. Begin log. Dr. Williams and Dr. Siegel both sit inside their laboratory. Smoke is dispersed throughout the room. Siegel. Fritz, did you ever hear about the fake communities that have sprung up outside the city recently? Williams. I can't say I've heard of it outside of a brief mention, but I'll hazard a guess and say it isn't good. It really isn't. I've never quite known something of this scale. So many people were displaced and have no place to go but to these new communities. It's soured the weak ties we previously had. How so? According to the press, some small groups have formed a bit of a personal vendetta against the rest of the world. They blame those around them for their plight, and have been the cause of some quite unpleasant acts. I think the worst part may be that they're gaining traction. I can't say I'm surprised, but it's hard to see the gap between us grow further. I was hoping that our work would help bridge the divide and begin to lead us both into a brighter future, but I fear that it was too little, too late. They both sit in silence. Do you think we could have done something to stop all this? Aaron, my friend, what in God's name are you talking about? I. I mean, have you seen what's happening? These things don't happen without warning. There must have been some way to know, some way to help before it all happened. Not everything is as easy as that. You and I both know this. You can't know for certain what will happen until it has. You can tear yourself apart piece by piece thinking you have the answers to everything, but still, something seemingly impossible happens and throws all ideas of the future into the wind. But that's just it. It wasn't just one disaster. It was countless ones all close together. I think it's beginning to get to me. I don't even remember the last time I saw a new item in our labs. Isn't that crazy? We used to have new ones almost every day of the week to study, and now we're lucky to get one at all. What happened? I don't know. I just thought that... Dr. Siegel suddenly grasps his chest and falls to the ground. Aaron, are you okay? What's happening? He continues to writhe on the ground. The air around his arm crackles with lightning for some time. As the lightning disperses, his arm segments and peels away from his bone. Dr. Siegel screams in pain, but as he does, his face melts and falls to the ground. The melted flesh lifts itself from the ground and changes shape into 3 faces. Each face resumes screaming. This continues for almost a minute as Dr. Williams attempts to help Siegel. Siegel's body reverts to its previous form. He sits on the ground, panting. What was that? What the hell was that? Williams grabs Siegel by the shoulders. Aaron, are you okay? I think so. I felt like my entire body was falling apart. It looks like the space around you unraveled. I think something's very wrong with the world right now. You don't say. I almost couldn't tell. Sorry, that was a little obvious, wasn't it? But we need to look into this right away. I have a feeling that the balance of the world has been offset. Offset? I was worried about this when I heard of cities losing their power. That's magic breaking. Breaking. Magic doesn't just break without the universe having something to say. It pushes back and breaks things more. It's a vicious cycle, but it wouldn't be starting without something big kicking it all off. And if it keeps happening, we could be unable to go back. So, what do? We figure out what happened, and we figure out how to fix it. Quickly. End log. Following the events of this conversation, Williams and his research team concluded that the technique they had developed was responsible for the changes in the environment and damages to several aspects of reality, brought on by the destruction of anomalies for energy to create artificial copies of said items. Due to this discovery, the research team, with the assistance of several governments and organizations, devised the creation of the Veil to protect the Anomalous from the entirety of the world's population. The CK-class scenario formed by this removed the knowledge of the Anomalous from almost all the population and hid them through several different mediums. The information regarding the ceremony has been documented below. Video transcript 6099-E. Date: January 15th, 1839. Location: Detroit, Michigan. Forward. The final moments before the initiation of the CK-class reality restructuring scenario initiated by Dr. Fritz Williams in a chamber within his research lab. Begin log. Dr. Williams stands above a thaumaturgic circle created from a series of intricate patterns in geometrically impossible shapes. Williams takes a small beaker filled with yellow powder from his side and pours it onto the circle below him. The room is filled with a dull blue glow as the shapes within the circle split into 2 smaller versions of themselves, which proceed to split into 4 versions of the pattern. They proceed to duplicate until each pattern becomes indistinguishable from one another. Williams begins to speak. Williams. May the world no longer know the truth. May lies become our reality. May the world be secure in ignorance. The ground begins to crackle with green lightning as the powdered pattern moves up from the ground and reaches towards the feet of Williams. He continues speaking. For the sake of magic, it cannot be known, and it must be kept separate, contained in a world of its own, and seen by those that I can trust. We will make sanctuary to ensure the safety of all. Everything will be the same, if not better. Picking up a small metal canister, Williams walks into the circle as the powder moves up over his body and surrounds his face. He drops the canister onto the ground, causing it to break, and disperses a pale gas into the circle. The powder begins to kindle and ignites, dispersing into the air. A surge of blue energy releases from the circle and hangs in the air. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I failed to protect you all. The blue energy in the air forms a sphere around Williams and suddenly expands outwards, enveloping its surroundings. It continues to expand at an increasing rate, wrapping everything it passes in a new layer of reality. Any anomalous items that were caught in this expanse becomes mundane. The light continues to spread until all the world is covered. The CK-class scenario concludes. Dr. Williams sits slumped inside his chamber. End log. Email. 2:05 Council. From 051. Subject. SCP-6099 concerns. Good afternoon, everyone. Many of you expressed your concerns to me about the existence of SCP-6099's file and the information it pertains to. I'm sending this email to reassure you all that there is no reason to be worried. While it is true that the creation of this organization may have been influenced by the reality restructuring scenario described in its article, this should not influence the primary directive of the Foundation. I will remind you that we maintain normalcy. This is not to be confused with maintaining the natural order of our world. The natural order of the world is not normal, nor is it something we should strive to protect. Normalcy is for the sake of the people of our world and is made in their best interest. We have, and forever will, secure, contain, and protect. Signed, 1. Thank you for listening to SCP-6099, Unveiled, by R4EX. If you enjoyed this SCP, please like and subscribe, and follow the link in the description to the SCP Wiki, and vote up the article to support the author and the SCP Wiki as a whole.